So today we made a very special trip. It's a little vacation in honor of Halloween and spooky season. This is something that I have legitimately always wanted to do. We've got several of them in Montana, but this one is the most well preserved. It's the one I've heard the most about. So we are at the Garnet Ghost Town, and I am so excited to check it out and hopefully see a ghost. Garnet Ghost Town is located about 3.5 hours from where we are in Whitefish. So I knew what I was getting into, and I knew that this was going to be another long day in the car with Will. But I have to say it was worth it and really paid off in the end. I loved visiting this ghost town. We drove through the Swan, so it was a scenic route the entire drive, and we ended up on this long kind of winding road that led us through a bunch of trees to the actual town. Be aware that you are able to visit the ghost town in the winter. It's open year round, but this road won't be plowed or maintained. So if you want to do that, you're going to have to either snowmobile or snowshoe or cross-country ski. When we made it to the parking lot, we quickly realized that we were practically the only ones there, which was awesome. It really felt like we had the entire place to explore to ourselves. And after you park, you take a very short hike to get to the actual town. But first you stop at this overlook and you kind of get to look out over everything before you get out and start exploring. So that was a very nice little vantage point. And then as we continued on, I tripped, and that was Will's probably the happiest moment of his day. This building is one of the earliest in Garnet, built before 1898. It was called Davy's Store, and it sold dry goods, shoes, jewelry, canned goods, mining tools, cuts of meat, just a variety of provisions. The store boasted a hardware section, and in the 1910s started functioning as the post office. This is what remains on Main Street. A lot of the buildings were burned down in a fire, but like that building on the left was called Kelly's Saloon at one point. It had an upstairs area for the saloon girls, and there's still a hotel that you can look inside. And it's so bizarre to think that like 100 years ago, there would have been a ton of people wandering those streets. After we checked out the downtown area, we made our way to the cabins where all the miners lived. This was actually a cabin, it's called the Honeymooners Cabin, and it is where newlyweds were allowed to stay rent-free right after they got married. And then when the next couple got married, it'd be their opportunity to move in. And I think the biggest takeaway was just walking inside and feeling how tiny everything was. I mean, it makes sense. They built these buildings really fast. A lot of them aren't even on foundations, and having them so small meant that they were easier to heat. But this was a town that had families. So you would walk into a house with a bedroom and a living room, and there would be like 6 people living in it. So that was kind of crazy to see in person. That's looking back on the downtown area, and then this is kind of up in the neighborhood, if you will. This was a horse stable. They have a hayloft upstairs for the hay, and then obviously there's some stuff still sitting in here. Here is another cabin. Again, so cool to walk inside. A lot of these cabins still had their wood stoves left behind. But look at that. So easy to heat, so cozy. When I was younger, I was obsessed with being a pioneer. I wanted to ride in a covered wagon. I wanted to live in a cabin like this and churn butter. And I gotta tell you, seeing it in person just really reinforced that dream for me. It was so cool. Here we are looking back over the town. We did stop in the jail. I wanted to make sure that was something that we did not miss, because that's where Will would have spent the majority of his time here. And fun fact, they actually put logs in the ground, so that was one of the only buildings that had some sort of makeshift foundation, and it's so the prisoners couldn't dig their way out. Very smart. Now up here we have one of the nicest, it actually probably is the nicest cabin in the whole town. So while Will would have been sitting in his jail cell, this is probably where I would have lived. Now, as you can see in here, they've still got some stagecoaches hanging out. I learned that these are called Democrats, and so it's got a really fancy name that speaks to me, but it's really just a spring wagon with 2 seats. And then there we can see the saloon from my front door, which is perfect. Society in Garnet differed from that of earlier mining camps. While single males were predominant in early mining camps, Garnet actually had many families. Social life, therefore, was quite different. And although drinking, gambling, and houses of prostitution were still enjoyed by men, married women were far more numerous in Garnet. They rarely visited the saloons and only went to the business district to shop for necessary food and clothing and provisions. So also, unlike earlier camps, a schoolhouse was established in Garnet soon after its founding. We got to look in here. There are still desks inside. Very cool. There were a variety of social activities that were available to the residents of Garnet. There were family-oriented activities. They had dinner parties, played card games, and hayrides were common. One of the largest community celebrations in Garnet was the annual Miners' Union Day gathering held at the Miners' Union Hall, and many of the social functions were held at the hall, which was completed in June of 1898. Community dances were held there every Saturday night, and then the early years of Garnet, there were often 3 or 4 social functions a week. The hall, with its one large room and a small stage, often was scarcely large enough for the crowd. So Garnet was a hoppin' place. It is so fun to visit. I highly recommend it. Everything is definitely in very good condition, and I just wish that I could have gone into more of the buildings. But it was very fun, very cool, and the perfect Halloween treat. Ta-ta.
Thank you for watching our video. Please call, text, or email for more information, and don't forget to watch our other videos about Montana.